These conditions all stem from some system that's in play here. The financial system, the banking system, employment, industry, healthcare, criminal justice, education, housing, real estate, insurance, retail. Okay, I want to keep pulling us back to the systems because that's what's important here. And the social and the cultural. So I'm just going to read you a couple of things that Peggy McIntosh, she says, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. When I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. Getting back into the historical, the authentic history piece, the education piece that we were talking about before. Again, I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. Not just a paragraph or a few words in a textbook that comes into your school district under a multi-million-dollar contract. I can arrange to protect my children most of the time from people who might not like them. I am never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. If a traffic cop pulls me over, or if the IRS audits my tax return, I can be pretty sure that I haven't been singled out because of my race. I can easily buy posters, pictures, postcards, greeting cards, dolls, toys, children's magazines featuring people of my race. I can take a job with an affirmative action employer without having coworkers on the job suspect that I got it because of my race. And the list goes on and on. These are the kinds of ways that our consciousness as white people can be raised, because you get a different lens. You're seeing the world through a different lens. It's uncomfortable work. It's unsettling. But I do want to emphasize one more thing, that it's important when you do anti-racism work, and I don't care who you are, that you do it in a community, preferably a spiritual community, where if you want to cry and carry on, your people are going to be around you to support you and take you through whatever it is that you're going through. And very important to build the relationships over time with people while you're doing this work. In other words, you need to be able to trust. There have been instances when I've been with Nancy in different places. Remember when we were in Hartford and we went up to the booth, and it was like this white guy, he's not talking to Nancy. We both were together. That happens a lot. It happened today in Harris Teeter. We went in to get the fruit. And the lady, Nancy's the one that's got all the, the receipts and the money. And this woman is talking to me the whole time. But this is what we need to start to do in order to understand what race is.
She's like, what's she talking to me for?
It's like a fish in water. The water is all around you, and you really don't see it until you start to look at the water and you start to examine it. Self-reflection, self-criticism, study, look at history, be with people who are like-minded, who are questioning. I belong to a group of white people. It's a white support group because we are recovering white people.
It's an anti-racist
right,
white group.
It's an anti-racist white group, but we are dealing with what are the implications and what can I do on my job, for instance, or what can I do in my church or in my synagogue, or how do I deal with this? How do I deal with the newspaper? Or how do it's really important because it is spiritual work. It's your identity. So,
Can I go next?
Okay. Your turn.
I'm being facetious. I hope you know that.
You are? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I just want to let you know that I have some handouts here which are not in the overheads. One is called The Stages of White Racial Identity Development. Kind of similar to what Nancy put up at the beginning of the day about moving from a monocultural to a multicultural anti-racist. This is by a woman named Janet Helms, who wrote a book called Race is a nice thing to have, a guide to being a white person or understanding the white persons in your life. She's a black woman. So I have these are the stages, they're kind of like the stages of grief, or different stages but this is the stages of developing an anti-racist identity. Then the other one is the cost of oppression. And well, we don't have time for me to go through this. The psychological cost, loss of authentic self, loss of who you really are, social costs, you're isolated like me. I was raised in a white suburb. It's like, something's wrong with this. Moral and spiritual costs, going to church and professing to be a spiritual person, and then, well, you see what goes on outside. Intellectual costs, not having a full range of knowledge about the world and about your neighbors and about people in the world. And the material costs, quality of life. And then also there's a section on the benefits, because the benefits are many. The benefits are many. The benefits is that you come back to who you really are. You're able to form authentic relationships with people. You're able to be honest. You're able to open your heart. You're able to be wrong. You're able to be corrected. And it contributes to democracy, which is what we're supposed to be all about.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about internalized racial superiority. First of all, when you have a you have a superiority, then you also have a what on the other side? An inferiority. So it's a complex, you can read this, complex multi-generational process that allows whites to believe, accept, and act upon internalized perception of their own superiority. And we see that early on. We know that by the time kids, for example, get to the 3rd grade, they'll start off in kindergarten. Black American kids of color, most of the time ahead, very often, of their white counterparts. But by 3rd grade, there is a drop-off. There's a tremendous drop-off. And they know, even though people don't like to talk about it, it has to do with the messages that are being internalized about your own inferiority. And kids pick that up. One of the experiments that was done in education was that some little kids, like 2nd grade, I think, were taking a math test. And one of the students was a black female. And she got 100 on her math test. And another student, a little white boy, was like, he was astounded. Well, how could she do that? Because the assumption is that he should have been the 100% student, not her. So those messages are already in place from almost actually at the time of birth and maybe even before birth. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So internalized racial superiority has been supported by pseudoscientific ideology, and we know that we've had pseudoscientific stuff that was written in books, and we all assume that when something goes in a book, hey, if it's in a book, it must be legitimate. Well, that is not true. And one of the funny things that it's not funny, it's pathetic. That was a science in the 18th and 18th century during the time of the enslavement of people of color, was that there was a term that was allegedly a medical term. And I can't think of the name of it now. Drapetomania. How many of you ever heard of drapetomania? Okay, I know you would. Drapetomania was a term given to a black person who would keep running away from being enslaved. They were suffering with drapetomania. Scientific terminology. How ridiculous. How ridiculous. And yet we still do the same thing even today. So don't assume because it's in a book, and we're going to be doing a little bit more of that, how things are in books and make us, shape us, and form us to see things in a particular way.